Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be diving into something pretty wild, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be one of those topics where you start to think a little differently about the way the world works.
I think so, too.
We're talking about healing, but not healing in the way that you might think about it.
Yeah.
Like going to the doctor and getting a prescription or,
Right.
having surgery.
Yeah, yeah.
What if the most powerful medicine isn't something that comes from outside your body, but it's something that you already have inside you?
That's a great question.
We're going to be exploring the placebo effect.
Yeah, this is one of those topics that has fascinated people for centuries. We've always kind of recognized that there's a connection between our minds and our bodies.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's really only been recently that we've started to be able to understand just how powerful that connection is.
Yeah, and I think where our deep dive starts today is actually back in the 18th century in Paris.
Ooh, Paris.
With a physician named Franz Anton Mesmer. Now, this guy was really interesting. He caused a huge stir with his claims of magnetic cures.
Magnetic cure?
Magnetic cures. Like, imagine this crowds of people flocking to his clinic to experience his treatments.
Wow.
And these treatments all centered around this mysterious device called a baquet.
A baquet? What is that?
A baquet. I'm so glad you asked.
Okay.
So imagine a large, polished oak tub.
Okay.
Almost like a giant, elegant cauldron.
Oh, okay, like a big pot?
Yeah. And this baquet had metal rods sticking out of it.
Okay.
It had ropes for people to hold on to.
Sure.
Sometimes there was even music playing.
Wow.
And it was all designed to create this sense of awe and anticipation.
So it's like a whole production, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. It was a total scene.
Wow.
So what would happen during these treatments? Well, patients would gather around the baquet, holding onto the rods.
Okay.
And many of them would experience these really intense physical reactions.
Real.
Things like convulsions,
Oh, wow.
shrieks, laughter.
The whole gamut.
Yeah. And Mesmer called this the crisis.
The crisis.
And he believed it was a release of this blocked animal magnetism.
Animal magnetism.
Animal magnetism, which is this invisible force he claimed flowed through all living things.
Okay, so he's attributing these physical reactions to this force, this animal magnetism.
Exactly. He's manipulating this energy
Interesting.
to heal people.
Okay, so where did he get this idea of animal magnetism?
Well, he was drawing on ideas that were pretty popular at the time
Okay.
about the influence of celestial bodies.
Ooh, like the stars and planets.
Exactly, on human health.
Okay.
So there was this kind of idea that, the stars and the planets and the moon
Yeah.
are affecting our well-being.
Mm.
And he thought he could kind of tap into that.
Wow, so he was a really early adopter of the wellness movement?
Totally. And he was a bit of a showman.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
He attracted huge crowds, and he even got the attention of Queen Marie Antoinette.
Wow, he was like a celebrity doctor.
He was like the Dr. Oz of his day.
I can see that.
But as you can imagine, not everyone bought into his theories.
I was going to say there had to be some skeptics in the crowd.
Absolutely. There were
Yeah.
people who were like, this is crazy. This is nonsense.
Right.
And so skepticism started to grow in the scientific community.
Makes sense.
And eventually, King Louis VI actually appointed a commission to investigate Mesmer's claims.
A royal commission
I know, right?
to debunk animal magnetism.
Yeah, and the leader of this commission was none other than Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, wow. Benjamin Franklin, the American ambassador to France.
The one and only.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting to me because Franklin himself was super into the power of sound and vibration.
Right. With his glass harmonica.
Exactly. He invented this instrument.
Yeah.
Which was actually sometimes used during Mesmer's treatments.
Oh, wow. So he had a personal connection to this idea of influencing the body.
It's like he was almost primed to be interested in this.
That's fascinating.
So Franklin and the rest of the commission, they designed all these clever experiments to try to test Mesmer's claims.
Clever in what way?
Well, they introduced things like magnetized trees.
Magnetized trees.
Magnetized trees.
Yeah.
And they had absent healers.
So fake healers.
Basically, yeah, they were trying to figure out, okay, is it really Mesmer's animal magnetism that's causing these effects? Or is it something else?
Right. So they're trying to isolate the variables.
Exactly.
Very scientific.
So what do they conclude?
Well, I'm on the edge of my seat.
Well, they said there is no evidence for this animal magnetism.
Okay.
But they did say that many of Mesmer's patients were genuinely experiencing healing.
So they were getting better.
They were getting better, and they attributed this to the power of imagination.
Imagination.
and what we now call the placebo effect.
So they're saying that the belief in the cure, the ritual, the expectation of healing was actually making people better.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And this was a huge turning point.
It really was.
Because it showed that even though Mesmer's theories might have been flawed, the power of belief in healing was undeniable.
Right.
And this really laid the groundwork for our modern understanding of the placebo effect.
So it wasn't just Mesmer's charisma or showmanship. It was something deeper.
Exactly.
It was the power of belief.
Yeah.
And that brings us up to the 20th and 21st centuries, where we've got a lot more science to help us understand this phenomenon.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a groundbreaking study that really provides even more evidence for this.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
So this study was done by a surgeon named Bruce Moseley in the 1990s.
Okay.
And he was studying a really common surgical procedure for arthritic knees.
Okay.
And he took a really interesting approach. He divided his patients into 3 groups.
2 groups. Okay.
So one group received the actual surgery.
Okay.
Another group, they had their knees flushed with saline.
Okay.
And the third group, they underwent a placebo surgery.
A placebo surgery.
Not placebo surgery.
I've never heard of that.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
So essentially what Moseley did was he went through all the motions of a surgery.
Really?
He made incisions. He manipulated the knee. He even played a video of a real surgery in the background.
Wow. So he really went all out.
But he never actually performed the key surgical steps.
That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So what happened?
Okay, so get this. All 3 groups reported significant improvement in their knee pain.
Even the group that got the sham surgery?
Even the group that got the sham surgery.
That's wild.
That's unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So what this shows us is that the placebo effect, it's not just about like wishful thinking or, positive self-talk.
Yeah.
It's something much more powerful than that.
So our expectations and beliefs, they can actually have a physical impact on our bodies.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder how powerful this effect is across all sorts of medical conditions.
It really does.
But it also begs the question, if placebos can work, how do we use that knowledge responsibly in medicine?
That is the question, isn't it?
And that's something we're going to delve into a little bit later in our deep dive.
Can't wait.
Me too.
This is fascinating.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm ready for the next bit.
Let's do it. This idea that our beliefs can somehow influence healing, it's not a new thing.
Yeah.
Even Thomas Jefferson once said that one of the most successful physicians he knew used more bread pills and colored water than actual medicine.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it's like we've always kind of intuitively known this, right?
Yeah.
That there's something about belief and expectation.
Right. And I think it was the advent of placebo-controlled trials in modern medicine that allowed us to actually measure this effect.
Okay.
And here's something that I think might surprise you. Even medications with proven effectiveness, they benefit from the placebo effect.
Really? So it's like an extra layer on top of the medicine itself?
Exactly. It's not just about the active ingredients.
Yeah.
It's about the whole ritual of taking the medication, the interaction with the doctor, believing in the treatment.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that. Like when you go to the doctor and you get a prescription,
Right.
There's this sense of hope that comes with that.
Exactly. And that hope, that expectation that can actually contribute to the healing process.
So it's like a mind-body synergy.
Exactly. And this brings us to the work of Ted Kaptchuk, a Harvard researcher who has really made it his mission to study the placebo effect.
Yeah, Ted Kaptchuk, I've heard of him. His work is really fascinating.
Yeah, and his path to this research is actually quite interesting.
Tell me more.
Well, he actually began his career in traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh, wow. So acupuncture and herbal remedies.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big jump from traditional Chinese medicine to Harvard Medical School.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, what led him to that world?
Well, he was really looking for a more holistic approach to healing, something outside the conventional medical model.
Okay.
And he ended up practicing in Boston in an area that was actually nicknamed Quack Row.
Quack Row.
I know, right? He was surrounded by all sorts of alternative healers.
I love it.
And you know what? He was surprisingly successful. Patients were reporting feeling better even before they started taking his herbal remedies.
Wow. So he was like a placebo effect machine.
He was. And it made him realize that there was something more than just the treatments themselves at work.
Okay.
He was seeing firsthand the power of ritual belief and the patient-doctor relationship.
So all these intangible elements that
Yeah.
were contributing to the healing process.
Exactly, and that's what led him to his research on the placebo effect at Harvard.
So he took those observations from Quack Row and
Yeah.
brought them into the lab.
He did, and he realized that these same forces are at play in conventional medicine as well.
Interesting.
The way a doctor interacts with a patient, the setting of a hospital, even the symbols and technology of medicine.
Right.
They all contribute to a sense of hope and expectation that can promote healing.
It's like the stagecraft of healing, creating the right atmosphere
Exactly.
for the body's own healing mechanisms to kind of kick in.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. Kapchuk has done research showing that placebos can work even when patients know they're receiving a placebo.
Wait a minute. How is that even possible?
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you know you're taking a sugar pill,
Right.
how can it have any effect?
Well, the research suggests that even in the absence of an active ingredient, the ritual of care, the belief in the treatment, and that positive interaction with a healthcare provider can still have a therapeutic effect.
So it's not about tricking the mind. It's
Yeah.
about tapping into something deeper.
Exactly.
This capacity for healing that we all have.
And I think Kapchuk's research really challenges our assumptions about what healing even means.
In what way?
Well, it's not just about fixing the body, right?
Like,
It's about addressing the whole person, their beliefs, their hopes, their connection to their caregiver.
So it's a much more holistic view of healing.
Exactly.
So if we know that placebos can be this powerful, this effective,
Right.
how do we use that knowledge responsibly in medicine?
That is the big question.
It's a huge ethical question.
It is, and it leads to some really complex considerations.
Much as.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the issue of deception.
Right.
Can we ethically prescribe placebos without being completely honest with our patients about what they're receiving?
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a slippery slope.
It does.
Yeah.
And many argue that that kind of deception undermines trust and the doctor-patient relationship.
And that's so crucial.
Absolutely.
Robust.
But there are researchers who are exploring ways to use the placebo effect ethically and transparently.
Okay, I'm curious to hear more about that.
Well, one example is the use of open-label placebos.
Open-label placebos. That sounds like an oxymoron.
It does a little bit, but the idea is that even if a patient knows they're receiving a placebo, the ritual of taking the pill, the belief in the treatment, and that positive interaction with the healthcare provider can still trigger beneficial physiological responses.
So it's like acknowledging the power of suggestion, but being upfront about it. You're not trying to trick anyone.
Right.
You're just kind of harnessing this mind-body connection in a more conscious way.
Exactly. And there's growing evidence that this approach can be really helpful for a variety of conditions, from managing pain to alleviating symptoms of things like irritable bowel syndrome.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about all the ways that the placebo effect might be at work in our lives.
I agree.
Like even the rituals we create around taking vitamins.
Right.
Or the way we talk to ourselves when we're not feeling well.
Absolutely.
It's like we're constantly giving ourselves placebos whether we realize it or not.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right? It helps us to see the world through a new lens.
Absolutely. And it raises some really intriguing questions about the future of medicine and how we can better harness the power of the mind-body connection for healing.
Well said. I think that's a perfect segue into our final part of this deep dive.
Let's do it. Wow. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from Mesmer's bouquet to modern-day placebo surgery.
We have.
And it's clear that belief ritual and that patient-doctor relationship, they can have a huge impact on healing.
They really can.
But where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's the big question.
How do we apply this knowledge to the future of medicine?
Right, because if we can harness this placebo effect ethically and effectively,
Yeah.
it could be revolutionary.
I mean, it makes you wonder if we've been too focused on the pills and the procedures,
Right.
and we've kind of overlooked this whole other side of healing.
Absolutely. I think we're starting to appreciate that healing is so much more complex than we used to think.
Yeah.
It's not just about the body.
Yeah.
It's about the mind, the environment. All these factors are intertwined.
So how do we integrate this knowledge into the current medical system?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, because we can't just start prescribing sugar pills
Right.
and telling everyone they're miracle cures.
Of course not. There are ethical boundaries we have to consider.
Yeah.
Deception is not the answer.
Okay.
But there are ways to incorporate these principles of the placebo effect without being dishonest.
Okay, I like that.
So, for example, we can focus on improving the patient-doctor relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that idea that a doctor's presence their care, their concern
Right.
can be a powerful placebo in itself.
Absolutely. Just taking the time to listen, to really hear what your patient is saying, to offer reassurance,
Yeah.
that can make a huge difference.
It's like you're acknowledging their suffering
Right.
and validating their experience.
And that in itself can be incredibly healing.
So it's about creating a space
Yes.
where patients feel heard, understood,
I
and
don't
cared
like
for.
that, absolutely.
And that can actually help their bodies heal.
Exactly. And we can also pay more attention to the rituals and the symbols surrounding healthcare.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about the design of hospitals, the way procedures are explained. Even the language we use, all these things, can influence a patient's expectations and ultimately their outcomes.
It's about setting the stage for healing.
Yes, creating an environment that supports the body's natural healing abilities.
And we can also be more mindful of the way we prescribe medications.
Right.
Explaining the potential benefits with enthusiasm and confidence.
Absolutely. Because that can actually enhance its effectiveness.
So it's not just about what we prescribe.
Right.
It's about how we prescribe it.
Exactly. It's about fostering hope and positive expectations.
And this brings us back to those open-label placebos we were talking about.
Yes.
Where even when patients know they're getting a placebo,
Right.
the ritual, the belief, the positive interaction with their doctor can still have those beneficial effects.
Exactly.
So we're acknowledging the power of suggestion.
Yes.
But we're doing it transparently.
Right.
We're not trying to fool anyone.
We're harnessing this mind-body connection in a more conscious way.
And there's evidence that this can be helpful for a lot of different conditions.
There is.
Pain, irritable bowel syndrome.
It's really quite remarkable.
It is. It's like we're starting to uncover this whole new understanding of what healing means.
I think so too.
It's not just about the physical body.
Right.
It's about the mind, the emotions, the environment, our beliefs, our expectations.
It's about the whole person.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
And I think it really challenges us to rethink what we thought we knew about healing.
I agree.
It's not as simple as we might have thought.
No, it's much more complex and much more interesting.
So much more.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive for today.
I think so too.
But this is just the beginning of the conversation.
It is.
We invite all of you listening to keep questioning, keep exploring.
Yes.
And most importantly, keep believing in the power of your own healing potential.
Well said.
So until next time, stay curious.